Hi guys, I'm just another guy named James, and today I'm going to be making a little bit of a different type of video. Because today I'm going to be talking about some toys. Specifically, the first line of the classic Secret Wars action figures from the 1980s, as well as the revival series of Secret Wars action figures from the early 2009 specifically. And there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of key differences between these series of figures. And we'll start today by talking about the original series of figures from the 80s. So yeah, the original Secret Wars characters had three lines of action figures. I only have a complete first line, and they're not even mine; they're my dad's. But I have some of the figures from Series 2 as well. So the figures from Series 1 are Spider-Man with some not quite right web lines. Dr. Octopus, who back in the day did have tentacle arms. And all of these Secret Wars figures also included shields or gun. They all included little secret shields. I don't have hardly any of those, but they were originally included with the figures. Then we have Kang the Conqueror, and Iron Man, Magneto, Wolverine, Doctor Doom, and Spider-Man. And what's worth noting about these figures is they're almost all completely recycled. The parts on these characters have been recycled and used for each other. The two characters that you can break almost everything down from are Captain America and Iron Man. So Captain America, you get the legs, arms, chest, and torso. Everything but the head is reused on Wolverine. Wolverine also back in the day did have claw accessories. Then same with Magneto. Everything on Magneto except for that headpiece is a complete reuse from Captain America. And then same thing for Dr. Octopus. Everything is complete reuse from Captain America. And then for Kang the Conqueror, everything except for the arms are reused from Captain America. And those arms are actually a reuse from Iron Man. We can see here they're exactly the same arms. Actually, my Iron Man uses a Doctor Doom arm for his other arm because the arm broke. And then we have our two most unique figures being Doctor Doom and Spider-Man. Doctor Doom does reuse Iron Man's arms and legs, but he has a unique torso with a unique sculpt on the back. And a very unique head sculpt, being that it's the only one with a hood. And one weird aspect of this Doctor Doom figure is it's a complete redesign from the classic comics. He doesn't have a cape, he doesn't have his skirt thing, and he doesn't have a belt, he doesn't have any of that. He has this completely redesigned armor, and he does eventually have that in the Secret Wars comic at the very end, but it is weird. And then we have by far the most unique figure, because I think it's the only one that doesn't reuse most of its pieces. We have Spider-Man, who has a unique leg. You can kind of see here with that little sculpt here. That makes this leg unique. He's the only character who doesn't have an Iron Man hand, who has a closed fist for a hand. But other than that, he's exactly like all of the others. So yeah, these figures were released in the 80s alongside the Secret Wars comic line, and they were made by Mattel. And yeah, all these figures came with they were called secret shields, these little holographic shield things that came with them. And this first wave makes a lot of sense, kind of. All of these characters were in Secret Wars. They all kind of played parts in it, I guess. That's where you do have some of the weirdness of this line of action figures. about half of the characters don't actually do anything throughout the comic. Like, honestly, Iron Man, Kang, and Dr. Octopus are all kind of weird pulls since they don't really do much in the comic. And it was pretty... So, yeah, the toy line was a moderate success back in the 80s. It seems like about half of the characters were pretty popular, Wolverine being far and away the most popular, as this was the first action figure of Wolverine, and a couple of these other guys, but Wolverine's the most popular character, where this was his first figure. But yeah, the figures, honestly, they feel a little gimmicky, because I don't have any of the secret shields or anything like that. They do just feel gimmicky. They have very limited movement. You know, your heads turn, your arms and legs move up and down. That is all the movement you get out of these figures. And now maybe that is just me being I have kind of high standards for action figure articulation. But if you look at what the G.I. Joe line was doing at the same time, you do kind of start to see where these could be considered failures of action figures. And yeah. But yeah, so there was a second wave of these figures released, and this second wave makes even less sense than the first. Because the second wave had five action figures. It had this Spider-Man figure where he's in a symbiote costume. This Hobgoblin figure, which I'll actually talk about a little bit in depth in a second here. It had a Daredevil, a Falcon, and Baron Zemo figures. Those are some weird pulls, because because Spider-Man here, this Black Spider-Man figure, is the only character that actually showed up in the comic. And then there was actually a third wave of figures that only released in Europe, and that had Iceman, Electro, and Constrictor. Which Constructor's a really odd pull, because it's not like he's a popular villain. But yeah, honestly, it's just a really weird series of action figures. And this Hobgoblin figure is actually the most unique of the Secret Wars figures. This waves 2 and 3 did have a lot of your unique figures, but Hobgoblin has, but everything except for maybe the torso is completely custom to Hobgoblin. Arms, custom. Cape, incredibly custom. He's the only figure with a cape. This head sculpt is really cool. It's a really well sculpted head. I'm going to put it like really close to the camera so you can see it. That's a really good head sculpt. And these, the boots are unique. He had a whole glider that came with the figure. It's a really interesting set of figures. But honestly, it's very of its time. And being limited by those little shield accessories that they all had to come with, it just ended up feeling gimmicky. And these also came with there were also vehicles that went along with this, and a couple of play sets. It was a very classic action figure line in that way. When really, for Marvel, all you need is the figures. And that's something that's a lesson that they learned in time for the 2009 line, excuse me. And these figures came out just in time for the Secret Wars 25th anniversary. And honestly, these are the action figures of my childhood. I think they're darn near perfect, and I love the way that these were actually packaged. Because these would come with 2 figures, obviously, as you can see. But it also came with a comic. So right there, that inside that sleeve, that is an actual reprint of Secret Wars number 1. So they released 12 of these action figure 2-packs. And they have so many characters because of that. They have 25 they have 25 figures. They have 25 figures, 24 characters. And man, they're really great action figures. Let's see. We'll start with the ones I've opened, because I got to open the rest of these. These are from the battle pack that came with issue number 7, and you have an Iron Man and a Spider-Woman. Great Spider-Woman, of course, is a great pull for that comic, since that's the first comic she's in. And I do really like this Iron Man figure, because it just looks so cool. And these figures have darn near perfect articulation. Because if you look here, there's bend at the hip, bend at the knee, a little bit of bend at the wrist, so you get posable feet, or at the ankle, and you get posable feet. The wrist spins. There's a bend at the elbow. There's a turn at the bicep shoulder, and there's a hinge and a turn at the shoulder to chest articulation point. The heads turn 360 degrees, and yeah, honestly, they're just really high quality action figures. And honestly, they're also very, very well sculpted. You can kind of see, and granted, these original Secret Wars figures are old, the paint's fading and whatnot, but these new ones are really just, I think they're darn near, they're perfect Marvel action figures, and definitely the best Marvel figures we've ever gotten. And here, we'll go with the Iron Mans. We'll compare them right here. Look at the difference in the amount of detail versus the size of the figure. Like these Marvel figures, they have such good sculpting. You get printing down to the fingertips, and you get individually sculpted fingers. It's just a really impressive feat of engineering. And honestly, I'm really happy to have all of these. And I'll cut in just a second here, and I'll show you what the complete set of 2009 Secret Wars figures looks like. And you'll kind of see what I'm saying about how there's a better figure selection versus the original 80s series. So yeah, I'll show you that in just a second. Right, and I'm back. So yeah, I got all the figures opened, and this is one of the coolest parts about this entire line of figures. You get a complete run of the comic out of these figure packs. Look at that. All 12 issues of the original Secret Wars series. And granted, they're reprints, whatever. There's no value in them, but you can read the entire story. I'm picking this one out because it's my favorite issue of the entire series. And it's the one that really makes you want a lot of these action figures because, man, it's a cool issue. It's an all-fight issue. But I do have an entire video talking about the Secret Wars comic series already on my YouTube channel, so you can just check that out, I guess, if you want to. But going back to the figures, man, there are 24 figures here. And they're all pretty darn good. There's no figure that I would say is bad. The only one I would say is kind of the weakest of the line is actually this guy right here, this Hulk figure. And the only weakness of the figure is that there's no bending articulation at the hip. And since that's the only weakness of the figure, it's still not a bad figure. He's just not perfect. And I think a lot of these other ones are darn near perfect. And I'm sitting here and I'm kind of trying to pick a favorite. And I really don't know. I mean, this Iron Man figure is great. I think this is the best Captain America figure they've ever made. They've made a handful in this style. But this one just has that bright blue and bright red to him that's just really cool. Yeah, those two are standout. This Nightcrawler figure, actually, I really like. I like the face detailing. He's this hyper posable figure, and yeah, that's just a really good figure. Let's see who else. This Spider-Man figure. And this Spider-Man figure, maybe not the best Spider-Man figure ever made, definitely up there, but I don't know if it's actually the best. It's really good. This Spider-Man figure was this Spider-Man figure and this Thunderball figure. These were two of the first action figures I ever got when I was a little kid. I got these two figures when I was 4 years old, and man, they were just so, it was just so cool. And they came with Secret Wars issue 3, which was one of the first comics I ever read, and to this day is one of my favorite comics of all time. And yeah, this is just like such a nostalgic, like opening that up again was such a nostalgic thing for me, because both of my original figures have broken, and my original comic is basically dust at this point. But yeah, but it's so these two figures are my favorites. Those are like my nostalgic favorites. This Thing figure, I love this Thing figure. He's just cool, and I love that this series actually included the Fantastic Four, unlike the original series, because this series also has Human Torch and Mr. Fantastic, and a couple of other figures. The Mr. Fantastic figure, I don't know how you make a great Mr. Fantastic figure, just because his power is really hard to communicate in action figure form, since he's, his whole power is that he's stretchy, and I don't know how you communicate that through rigid plastic. But yeah, one of the best sculpted figures I think of this line is Wolverine here. He's just, he's really well sculpted. You can kind of see the amount of detail they have on all of his muscles and all that. Very well done figure. And he actually has his claws as part of the mold of his character, which is pretty cool. I do really like this bright adventure style Cyclops. I do like that figure a lot. Hawkeye's a standout character of Secret Wars, and his figure is really well made. I like this figure of his a lot. Ultron, pretty good Ultron figure. Nothing too crazy about him though, except for that. Actually, I really like the way his face is sculpted. Look at that, very well sculpted. Doctor Doom might be up there for my favorite. He's such a cool figure, and I love that they went with his classic look, not his Battle World look. Because his Battle World looks really goofy. So yeah, I mean, overall these are just some great figures, and I do really love all of them. It's cool that they finally got the Fantastic Four in action figure form. They got all three of them who are in the actual comic series into figures. And I like that for the most part they really just kept it to sort of the important characters of the story. There are really only 2 or 3 figures in here, figures who I would say are important but also missing, because I would say they probably should have put a She-Hulk in, maybe a Molecule Man, but honestly that's really just kind of a nitpick. But man, looking at some of these characters versus their original counterparts, the difference is just so striking. Look at that. Doctor Doom is probably the most striking difference, because it's an entirely different costume, an entirely different look. And man, it was just such a cool thing they did back in the day. And I really wish that they would make more, that they would make this style of Marvel action figure again. And honestly, this style of action figures is all but dead, except for the Star Wars Vintage Collection, which has been going for a while now. But that's really the last of these hyper articulated, hyper detailed 3 3/4 inch action figure series. Because back when I was younger, when I was a little kid, they had a bunch of them. They had the G.I. Joe 25th anniversary. They had these Marvel Universe figures. They had Star Wars figures too. And I just hope that eventually there comes a time where this style of Marvel figure comes back. And one of the other great things about these Return to Secret Wars figures is that they were not the only Marvel action figures on the market. You could get other Marvel characters if you really want to. Let's see who I have on hand. I've this Captain Britain on hand, who came out from presumably around the same time. And really, it was just a cool time to be a Marvel fan, because even some of the weaker figures of this series, like Enchantress here, not the most exciting figure, probably the worst sculpted. Still a pretty good figure, honestly. And you get so many of your iconic Marvel characters through these series, through these 12 packs. You get so many iconic characters, and you get like some really cool variations, like this Black Spider-Man, the Symbiote Spider-Man. Even though it's not one of my favorite figures of the line, it's still a really cool figure. Same with this Thor figure. He's cool, even though he's a little weird. His hammer's a little small. He's kind of just a weird figure, but he's still cool. And he's got and these figures have these kind of tough rubber capes instead of the fabric ones, like what the DC figures used to have. And it's just cool. It gives the character more shape, more substance. I think these are some of the best action figures ever made, and man, they're just cool. And having them all laid out on my desk here, it's really cool. And even some of the weirder characters in here, like Claw and Pile Driver, they're still just good action figures at the end of the day. And I really like how many X-Men you get here, because you get three X-Men and Magneto. And Nightcrawler and Wolverine are two of my favorites of the series. And this Storm figure is pretty darn good too. It's 80s Storm when she has the mohawk and the leather vest and the biker Storm look. And then this Magneto figure is pretty darn cool. He's just Magneto. There's not much to say about him. But I like all the little details you get here, like the fact that his boots aren't just straight up purple. They've got the red lines in there too. Same with his gloves. And that little extra attention to detail is really something that's missing from the original figures. And man, comparing the originals to the modern, it's insane the difference. Like Wolverine's probably, Doctor Doom was probably the best example, but even Wolverine here, looking at that, the differences are astounding. Just the amount of detail on these modern ones is darn near unmatched. And, they didn't, going through these Secret Wars packs, they didn't remake every character who was an original figure. Like, there's no Dr. Octopus, there's no Kang. And the fact that there's no Kang is kind of a shame, because Kang would it looks like a really good figure. But he's also not very important in the story of Secret Wars, so I understand why he's not there. But yeah, honestly, these are great figures. They're a lot better than their originals. Honestly, I would highly, highly recommend picking up any of these figures that you can. They're just great. Yeah, that's really all I've got to say on them. It's just, they're great. They're such a vast improvement over the original series of figures, and it's really cool to have all of them. But yeah, that's really all I've got for today. So yeah, I'm just another guy named James, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.